Welcome to the Successful Nonprofits Podcast. I'm your host, Dolph Goldenberg. And today, friend, we're going to be talking with Paul Morris about making your CRM work for you. If you have ever signed a new CRM contract only to regret it a few months later, this episode is for you. Because we are going to be talking to Paul Morris about how to get the most out of your CRM and, by the way, out of your next CRM as well. Paul has been in the nonprofit fund development space for more than 3 decades. During this time, he has used countless CRMs and been pitched by nearly every vendor in the space. In fact, I'd be willing to bet many of whom are probably out of business now. For the past few years, he has been a consultant and a fundraising coach. And one of his fundraising coach gigs is with Auxilia, a donor management system that helps bridge the gap between nonprofits and donors. Hey, Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Dolph, thank you so much for having me. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
You and I had a great pre-conversation about thrifting, vintage, and crafting and paper, by the way. So, friends, I'm so sorry you missed that conversation. I should have hit record for it. But I do have a quick question that I thought might be a good way for us to start our conversation today. I know that you have used countless CRMs. Could you hazard a guess how many different constituent relationship management databases you've used?
Going way back, I would have to say 15 to 20 over the years. And you're absolutely right. I have been pitched by companies that are no longer in existence. And there's a reason for that. Yeah, I would say at least 20, probably 20, not at least 15, probably 20. Some of them proprietary. Others, within the marketplace.
And most of those, did you inherit that you had to work with, or did you contract with the company to bring that CRM in?
As so many people will feel similarly, I inherited most of them. And with those that I inherited, I often looked for a way out of those CRMs to bring in something that was actually going to be useful.
Yeah. And of those CRMs that you inherited and you're like, just not useful. What were some of the deadly pills that kept you from being able to really make them work for your organizations?
Well, this is not the fault of the CRM. One of the hardest things, of course, is the data set. Right? I mean, how many times have you inherited just really awful data? It's incomplete, it's fragmented, it's like just a ton of misspellings. And that's not the CRM's fault. And it's not even the vendor's fault because they can only deal with the data that they have. Now, I would say that they should pay closer attention, right, in the mapping process, but bad data is the first thing. The second thing, and this is the fault of a CRM, is a poor structure, poor infrastructure where data that you have doesn't fit into the CRM unless you want to spend tens of thousands of dollars of particular development to make it work. Right. And so a bad structure, just a bad fundamental structure is really, really challenging because at least with incomplete data, fragmented data, like you can fix that. But if you don't have a good structure, then that data is no longer useful and you can't do anything with it once you have it in there. I think poor user interface is also something that just makes my skin crawl because for a lot of nonprofits, you're using that system every day in different ways to accomplish different things. You look for alternatives, right? Which often means something outside of the CRM. And then do you remember to import that data back into it, right? Which I'm going to say like 60-40 no. A subset of poor design, poor user interface is a poor reporting structure. Either reports don't exist, or they're too hard to create, or they are inaccurate, or, list three other things that make reporting really, really difficult. And then the last thing is ridiculous contracts. Like locking a nonprofit into a long-term contract, even if they're paying it on a monthly basis, I think is just unconscionable, because basically you are forcing a nonprofit to pay for something that they likely abandon. That's money being spent that goes nowhere. It doesn't support the direct work that the organization is doing right then, nor does it support propelling the organization forward. I mean, I'm all for reasonable costs, but why insist that nonprofits pay for the painful pleasure of not using your system?
Agreed. And I want to dive into all four of those. I want us to unpack all four. Before we do, though, let me just start with those ridiculous contracts. My pet peeve are those, frankly, software as a service, so cloud-based software contracts that have a 3-month automatic renewal. So if you don't give them 3 months notice, they renew for another 3 or 5-year term. Paul, those are so my pet peeve that when I step in as an interim executive director, I will normally ask for copies of the CRM contract. If they have an electronic health record or something like that, I ask for that as well. And I just automatically give however much notice. Even if we have 2 or 3 years left, I'm like, here we go, here's your written notice. And oftentimes they'll panic and freak out. What's wrong? And I'll say, oh, I just want to make sure that we're intentional if we want to keep you. And so, I'm going to step away, and another 6 or 9 months, the permanent executive director will come, and, they have a permanent development director, but I don't want them to accidentally forget and get stuck for another 3 or 5-year term.
I mean, that's what a lot of vendors are hoping. They are hoping that a nonprofit, that they're going to be so busy doing their work or struggling to do their work that they're just going to forget that they have that service. And oh, great, we get to lock you in for another 3 to 5 years. And sorry, this is what the contract says. Even if it's in like 7-point type, it's like, that's what the contract says. There's nothing we can do about it. And frankly, there's nothing we will do about it, because we don't care.
I also think nonprofits can negotiate more on that. A few interims ago, I stepped in as an executive director of an organization that their EHR, so electronic health record, not CRM, but similar type of software as a service. So their EHR had renewed 2 months before I had gotten there for a 5-year term, and they renewed like 55 seats when the organization only needed 35 seats. And mind you, they're paying a couple $1,000s per seat per year. So of course I reached out, and they gave me that song and dance. You're talking, oh, we're so sorry. We wish you would have reached out sooner. And I was like, let me just call BS where BS is due here. You won't have the power to change this back down to 35. You're choosing not to. And so literally I sent over the 3-month notice to terminate at the end of this 5-year contract. And once I did that, suddenly they said, oh my gosh, what do we need to do? And that's when suddenly they were willing to try to work with us. They did not come down to the total seats we wanted, but they did decrease by like 15 seats. So they came down significantly for us. Understandably, like, this gives you some room for growth. So I would encourage everyone who's listening, look at those contracts, go ahead and give notice. And by the way, the vendors are going to give you way better attention after you tell them bye.
Right. Or the salesperson that you worked with is now mysteriously no longer there.
Yeah.
And no one has picked up that account. And even despite your best effort to be in touch, they're like, well, sorry, we never heard from you. I'm like, but that's your hiring practices, or people who are there or not, you're retaining or letting go. That's not our problem. And I think that you're absolutely right. I do think that often nonprofits they feel like they don't have the power to negotiate, or they shouldn't negotiate. They should feel badly, like they've, have been told that they've gotten such a good deal or whatever, which is probably not true for the most part, or they feel inexperienced in that. I agree. I think that there's way more power. Nonprofits have more power than they realize.
And to that point, we can negotiate any contract up to the point that we sign it because we could just choose not to sign it. Like I negotiate out automatic renewals all the time. Now, obviously, like if you're doing it with Microsoft Office 365, you can't. But if you're doing it with a CRM vendor or an EHR vendor, you probably can.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And people just, for whatever reason, maybe they're overwhelmed, they're tired, like they've been pitched and pitched and pitched, and they don't think to do that. And to their sadly to their detriment.
So if we can dive in on those other three, the first one I think you said is so often the CRM is not what we need. So, it's almost like when we buy a house and we're buying a new house and we think, oh, we're going to walk in and it's going to be perfect and there's no windows. And the builder says, oh, you wanted windows. Windows are extra. What do you mean you wanted windows? Oh, you wanted a grant module. Oh, no, we don't have a grant module. You wanted an event module. That's an extra $5,000. I know I see that all the time with CRMs.
Yes. So I think it's a couple of things. One, I believe that a number of vendors have seen the nonprofit space as another revenue stream. And they are taking their standard product and they're just bolting it onto the nonprofits, right? They're just offering it to the nonprofit space, and maybe they're giving it a different coat of paint, and they're hoping that you don't notice that there aren't any windows. Or it's just the seat licenses, but you're going to have to pay for actual development. So really, it's not free. Yeah, okay, great. You got 10 free licenses, but then you have to spend $10,000 to develop the product. So I think that's one of the first things. Secondly, I have seen and have a suspicion that it's seen as a sale. So we just have to sell rather than looking at this as a relationship or a partnership, right? Which we're doing on the nonprofit side. We're doing this. We are looking at our current and potential supporters through a very relational lens. But we're not getting that from a lot of CRM vendors. Or if they say that they're doing that, really they're not. They want to get you into whatever product they need to be selling.
I think 100% every CRM salesperson is going to say to the people they're pitching, oh no, our company's different. You're going to have a relationship with us. We're going to be there. We're going to hold your hands for setup. And whenever you have an issue, we're going to fix it. So how does that individual development director or executive director, who's only making a CRM purchasing decision once every 5 or 6 years, how do they navigate knowing when that salesperson is telling the truth and when they're not?
So first, I think that nonprofit development directors, executive directors, they need to stop being afraid of technology. They have to stop being afraid that there isn't a solution in the marketplace for them. They have to stop being afraid of looking dumb or incompetent or as if they're asking obvious questions, right? They have to change their mindset, which they probably do with other large purchases that they are making in their own lives. They have to start looking at CRM purchase through a very critical lens and be willing to say, explain this to me like I'm in first grade. Do not just take whatever is being offered. Take the time to ask every single question that you want to ask. And if a vendor can't or won't answer it, which I have had this happen, a simple question of, so all things being equal, why should I choose your product over your competitor? I've had more than one salesperson refuse to answer that question for me. I'm not looking for them to drag their competition, but If they are unwilling to answer that question, that to me is a signal that they don't actually believe in the product that they are trying to sell me. If they don't believe in the product, why should I? So I have to be willing to say, thanks for your time, but I really need a partner. And so I'm going to look elsewhere. So stop being afraid of technology or of sounding dumb. Ask all the questions that you need. Ask them who is using this CRM. It's easy to find out. I've called colleagues, like, who are you using? Right. Or go online. My Facebook feed is like, it's tennis, red pandas, and nonprofit fund development. I can go into any of the Facebook groups that I'm involved with or I'm subscribed to and either ask this question or search the archive and see, right, locally, who is using this. A vendor should be willing to say, you should talk to so and so.
Right. If I can jump in, I love the idea of going online and looking at your social media because the vendor's going to cherry pick. The vendor's going to, give you the folks that love the CRM. I really like the idea of like going on LinkedIn or Facebook and saying, hey, we're thinking about switching to XYZ CRM. If you use it, I'd like to have a conversation with you. And you're going to get two camps. People who are like, oh my gosh, we switched 2 years ago. It's the best thing ever. And people who will say, we switched, it was horrible, and we left.
And you should talk to both of those groups.
Yep.
You should talk to both of those groups and then make a critical decision for yourself. When I took my first development director job, a mentor of mine said, your role now is to take in and evaluate information and make the best possible decision based on the information that you have. I really appreciated that advice because I could ask 3 different people, get 3 different opinions on any topic. I have to trust and have confidence in myself. Going back to that very first thing, not being afraid, I have to have trust and confidence in myself that I'm going to take this information in and I am going to make a decision. And if I have to change that decision, I will change that decision. But this is the best decision possible in the moment.
I know from previous conversations that you and I have had, perhaps part of the issue around CRM design and report structure is because most of these companies are not really staffed with fundraising professionals. They're really sales channel professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that is true. A lot of CRM vendors they don't understand the nonprofit space, despite its place in the overall, U.S. economy, and despite its, large, massive scale, it's still a very unique and weird thing. How decisions get made can be very localized. There's no necessarily rhyme or reason to it. It can be very personality driven. And so when, you have, like you said, sales channel professionals who are just trying to close sales, all they do is they talk within their key talking points and they're not necessarily getting to know that nonprofit or figuring out how to support that potential decision maker. Because then, if you're talking to a development director, they may have to get approval from the executive director, or in a lot of cases, then they have to get board approval. And like, that's a whole nother conversation, like how boards interfere and micromanage to the detriment of the organization. So if I'm a sales professional, how can I support this development director who's being pitched, by every other vendor, is super overwhelmed, are trying to, just trying to do their daily work? How can I be of support to get that decision to yes? It's really like, make a decision, right? We'll give you a 30-day trial and then you're going to make a decision. And it really puts the onus on that development professional or executive director to ask questions, make decisions, and fill in the gaps that too often exist because it's just seen as a sales channel.
As we talk about those decisions, I want to reflect for a minute. As I think about this, I can't think of a world where the board of directors should be signing off on the new CRM, but I'm open to being challenged. Can you think of a world where it's appropriate for the board to say, we have to sign off on this?
No, I can't. And
Okay.
why nonprofit leaders allow their boards that level of control is beyond me.
I cannot see a world where a $500,000 organization says, "Oh, we want to invest in a $200,000 CRM." I
No,
can,
no,
I,
definitely
I,
not.
I can see a world where a $25 million organization does. That's less than 1% of their operating budget. Like even then, I don't see a world where the board should be signing off on that. And what's more, I don't think the board has the expertise necessary to do it. And as I think about that governance hat the board wears, if the board really is concerned about staff making a decision on 1% of their budget, the board needs to think about replacing their chief executive because they don't trust their chief executive.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But how many organizations have you seen? Do you know? Have you worked with where the board demands that kind of control?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I wanted you and I to have this part of the conversation because friends, if you have that board, you need to send this episode to your board chair and be like, listen, I don't know what the minutes are, the minutes and seconds are, but listen, from this period to this period, you just need to hear this. Like honestly, send it. Like let us be the bad person. Let us be the one telling your board, look, not only are you out of line, you're out of your depth. Unless
Right.
you're a board full of fundraisers, you are out of your depth.
Or your board is full of technologists who really understand the nonprofit space, which is also not the
Yeah.
case. Now, I did work for an organization where we were moving from a proprietary database, which was DOS based, maybe. It wasn't Unix based, thankfully, but it was maybe DOS based or like early Windows based to something new and different. It was a national membership organization, a lot of records, and we were integrating it to our website and to our financials. And it had ended up costing probably low six figures to do all of that work. The organization's budget, as I recall, was maybe just slightly over $1 million. So we're talking like 10-ish
Yeah.
percent, but it was going to be worth the investment because it was good for our members and it was good for the organization on the back end to manage it. It was going to be a lot easier to manage, and it was very
Yeah.
technical work,
Yeah.
very technical work. But the board flipped out over this, and it was an intensely uncomfortable meeting because we had board members really questioning why we were spending this kind of money, and they just couldn't get it through their heads that what we were doing, one, was necessary, two, had been well researched. The staff also felt financially responsible for the organization, and to me, this is the real driver, is it was going to be good for our members and supporters. It would make their ability to contribute easier, to receive information smoother, to renew their membership more frictionless, right? And so, yes, it was a big investment, but it was going to be worth it in the long run because it's what we were going to be able to do to not only retain supporters, but also grow our supporter pool because it was just easier for people to engage with us. And this is where I think boards really get in the way. They don't think bigger picture, and how does that allow the organization to continue to scale? Okay, spending some money now allows the organization to scale maybe 2 or 3x the investment that's being made, or On the flip side, they are looking for some, shiny and different and new and creative, and it's going to be more fun, even though it will be a tremendous drain of resources because it's a terrible product.
So, yeah. And Paul, speaking of shiny and new, the other thing I was hoping we'd talk about is what you call the magpie syndrome.
Yes, magpie syndrome is, to me, leadership or organizations chasing newest, bestest, most fun, most creative, faster, better, because they think that that is a solution or a shortcut to the hard work of communications, of donor development, of donor retention, of mission fulfillment. They want something shiny and new and different because they think it's just going to make their lives easier or faster or more fun, or they're going to be able to be more creative, and they don't think about being consistent and relevant and timely and seeing supporters as partners. And how do you have a partnership where your values and vision align to be able to fulfill the mission of that organization? And so, yes, it often, I think that what it comes down to, so magpie syndrome is just chasing something shiny because it's shiny and you think it's going to solve all of your problems. And there are a lot of, frankly, I think there are a lot of vendors in the marketplace who play upon that. And so they use that language and they hope that no one is going to pull the curtain back and see what it really means. It's like, oh, this is new and shiny and different. Great. We've got all of the, we have the solution. And then, if you get through the implementation, you're like, oh, wait, just a second. This isn't any different than what we had previously. And then they get mad, right? Then people get mad at a vendor. It's like, you said it would do this and this. And they're like, oh, no, sorry, we didn't actually say that. You just heard that. Or maybe they did. And then they're like, well, sorry, you have a 3-year contract.
And I think so often when we engage in that magpie syndrome and we spend all of that time and energy and resources and money to migrate to a new CRM, when in fact, had we spent that time and energy and resources and money in figuring out our current CRM, we probably would have gotten further down the road.
Absolutely. And in fact, I would argue that it would be cheaper to figure out what you currently have, because there are some phenomenal technologists who can help you really understand what you have and how to use it to its maximum capability. There are communities of people out there who have been where you were, and they are willing to share their knowledge because they believe, as do I, we are all in this together. You're spending less on sticking with what you have, even though maybe it's not as shiny, not as fun, not as flashy as what X other organization is doing and talking about on TikTok. But it's what you need, where you're at, and it gets you to where you want to go. And then, how about investing some of that money into the staff that you need to actually do the work?
Yeah.
A lot of CRMs are built to go long term. Even if you have 10, 20,000 records, they can handle it. They have the architecture to handle it. How about adding this program staff or development staff that actually allows you to do your work better, more, on a deeper level?
Right. And to your point, I mean, to get the most out of our CRM, we have to dedicate staff time to it.
Yes.
If we just think, oh, the data is just going to magically go in and it's going to magically come out, we're always going to be disappointed with how little our CRM does for us.
Yes, it's our robot overlords are not here. You have to do the work. You have to do the work.
So, one final question before we get to two truths and a lie. Paul, I know that you've got your own fundraising consulting practice, Foundry Fundraising, but you've also chosen to affiliate with the CRM Auxilia. Can you tell me why you chose
Yes,
to affiliate with them?
because Auxilia, it was built with nonprofits in mind, and they see themselves as an actual partner with the nonprofit space. Auxilia has built a CRM that most nonprofits, they have everything they need all in one spot. And I think this speaks really strongly to startup nonprofits to maybe early mid-stage nonprofits where you're juggling multiple subscriptions to multiple services. You can have it all in one spot to do your work day in, day out consistently. Secondly, and even more so, why I have chosen to be involved with Auxilia is because Auxilia sees itself as a partner. We have developed a coaching program, a one-to-one tailored coaching program for Auxilia clients where clients have the opportunity to work with myself, and I have 4 colleagues on the coaching team as much or as little support as that organization needs. And it is going to be oriented to all of those things that allow you to use this really phenomenal tool. So, a few examples. How do you build a strong board? Let's talk about how to build a board that is active, a board that believes in where the organization is going. And how do you say no to people who are not going to be helpful? Um, Building an annual development plan. Well, I was just on a call with a client earlier today. We're writing their very first development plan. This is a phenomenal organization in San Diego. They've never had a written development plan. They're doing great work, and they know that to get to that next place, they need that, but they don't have the resources to hire a development person or someone with a fair amount of experience, right? Amongst the 5 of us on the coaching team, we have more than 100 years of experience.
Wow.
And so we can offer that to Auxilia clients at no additional fee. And our clients can get the kind of support that they need to really understand how, okay, they've got this great tool. How do we really use that tool to engage our first time supporters better, to work with our mid-level donors better, get our board on board with the development process, right? Things like that. To be able to do that, especially for small nonprofits, has been phenomenal. And we've seen phenomenal success with Auxilia clients who are taking advantage of the coaching program. That's not just, oh, read this white paper or participate in, this group chat. It's you and I taking the time to talk and me understanding what you need or what you want to be successful. Or if you don't know, I'm going to offer you, and just like all of my coaching colleagues, I'm going to offer you my best possible perspective and advice and support to articulate and then get to where you believe that you want to go.
Very cool.
And sometimes to get you to a place where you haven't thought that you could go.
And admittedly, I think that's the power of coaching, to help you get somewhere where you never thought you would make it. Well, Paul, I want us to jump over to one of my favorite parts of our podcast episodes, two truths and a lie. So give me 3 and I'll try to pick the lie.
Okay. I have a daughter who plays 3 sports. I started my career in the Seattle area, Seattle, Washington area. And I spent 5 seasons announcing women's flat track roller derby.
I know you have children. I don't know whether or not you want to, I don't know whether or not you have a daughter, and I don't know whether or not the daughter plays sports. I think you're, I think you went to college at some place called like Puget Sound College or University. So I'm going to assume you did start your career in that area. So I have to decide which is the lie, the announcer or the daughter who plays sports? And I could see you. I could totally see you as an announcer. So I'm going to go, you don't have a daughter that plays 3 sports.
Nope, that's wrong. Our daughter plays 3 sports. She plays water
Wow.
polo, she swims, and she does field events for track and field team.
Wow, very cool. Okay. So which of the 2 is the lie?
The Well, gosh, no, I guess none of those were a lie. All 3 of them are true.
Okay. Don't worry. Paul, I'll tell you, I did that.
Oh, sorry.
No worries, Paul. I have to share with you. Somebody recently turned the tables on me. It's like, Dolph, I'll play, but you have to play too. And I did the same thing. I gave 3 truths. And they said one, I'm like, no, that's true. They said the second, I'm like, nope, that's true. And they looked at me, they're like, so it has to be the third. I'm like, no, oh, shoot, I did it wrong. So I've done that too, my friend.
Well, I think it's just, all 3 are very exciting to me. I did announce women's flat track roller. The world champion Rose City Rollers are here in Portland. I was very fortunate to be on the announcing team for several seasons. It's really phenomenal to watch that. And these women are incredible athletes. It was a lot of fun. And we're very excited to see where our daughter goes. We never thought she would be as sport inclined as she is.
I will share with you, I am a huge supporter of Title IX. It has given women opportunities in athletics that without Title IX probably would never have existed. So I'm so thankful that your daughter was able to play sports.
Yeah, no, it's been phenomenal for her. She has a great circle of friends. She's a teen, and the knock on teens is they're just on their phones all the time. That it's something that she really enjoys, and she has really found herself. And more importantly, she's found a community to be in, right? And that is something that we very, very deeply appreciate. And yes, so I went to the University of Puget Sound, which is in Tacoma, Washington.
I apologize. Okay, I apologize.
Puget sounds just more fancy.
I was like, I thought that's what I said, but okay, got it. I mispronounced it. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right.
I don't get to the Northwest very often. I should get there more often. I don't get to the Northwest very often.
Yes, it's lovely out here.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. And I want to make sure that our friends have a way to get a hold of you. So a few things. First of all, friends, you can go to Paul's website. That's Foundry Fundraising at foundryfundraising.com. Additionally, if you want to check out the CRM that Paul is affiliated with, that's theauxilia.com. Once again, theauxilia.com. When you go to that website, you can also check out some monthly webinars. Additionally, if you want to see Paul there, you can also click on coaches. I did that earlier today, and you can see Paul and the other 4 people. I now know, though, that since they have a combined total of over 100 years, and Paul has 30 of those, everyone else has like 15 or 20 years of experience. Paul is like the granddaddy of the people that are coaching for Auxilia. And then finally, friends, we are going to link, because the URL is so long, in the show notes at successfulnonprofits.com, we are going to link to Paul's article, No Shortcuts to Success, a real talk guide to successful fundraising. Hey, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Dolph, thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I really, really appreciate everything that you're doing, providing a place and a community where we can learn, get support, and do our work better.
Thank you. And friends, if you found this episode with Paul useful, it might have made you think, oh, wait, we need to go look at our CRM contract and see how many years we're locked in for and if there's automatic renewal. It might have made you think, wow, we need to double down on the CRM, see if we can make it work. Or perhaps, oh, it's time for us to look for a new one. But regardless, if you found this episode helpful, there are 2 that I want you to consider. The first is episode 164, How to Love Your Next CRM with Maureen Walbioff. And the second is episode 114, Everyone Must Get on Board the Tech Train, or It's Not Leaving the Station, with Peter Gross. And that episode was all about how to create alignment within your organization before you make those key technology decisions that everyone has to end up buying into. So don't forget, you can scroll down on your phone in the show notes, and you can actually access both of those episodes below in the show notes. That, my friend, is our episode for this week. I hope that you have gained some insight to help you and your nonprofit thrive. And you know, friends, I have to say it, otherwise the lawyers will make me pull every episode off of the feed. I'm not an accountant, nor am I an attorney, and neither I nor the consulting practice provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. I know that I mentioned look at your contracts earlier. That was not tax, legal, or accounting advice. This podcast is for informational purposes only. And friend, you know what that means, because I say it every week. And every week I think I ask, you know what that means, right? That means that you should not rely on this podcast for tax, legal, or accounting advice. Please, if that is what you need, find a licensed, qualified professional in your area.